Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to another session of today's Climate Wednesday. So, today we'll be talking about unlocking the potential of funding for youth in agribusiness. And today with us, we have Miss Elizabeth Gulugulu. She's the program manager for AYICC Zimbabwe. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Durodoluwa Femi Ajala, and I'm pleased to be your host for today's session. So over to you, Miss Elizabeth. Do you care to introduce yourself to our audience today?
Thank you so much for the platform. I'm not sure if you allow me to call you your name in short because
Duro,
I
yes,
might.
Duro is fine.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. And as you have rightfully said, that my name is Elizabeth Gulugulu, the programs manager for AYICC. And yeah, I've been working in the agriculture space for like 3 to 4 years, working under Climate Smart Agriculture Youth Network. And I'm also the contact person for the Agriculture Working Group under the Children and Youth Constituency to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And I happen to be the programs manager for AYICC, whereby we have quite a number of projects that we are running that are climate related, climate smart related. So, yeah, basically that's me. And disclaimer, I'm not a farmer. I'm not a farmer, but I've been, yeah, because most of the times when people hear like people speaking about agriculture, they tend to think that maybe that person is a farmer or not. But anyway, we'll explain about that when we get into the
Exactly.
conversation.
Yeah. So just to give people that are listening a background, what exactly does your organization do, AYICC itself? Like
Okay.
in this, yeah.
Okay, thank you so
Yeah.
much for that. Let me try to break it down a bit. So, the African Youth Initiative on Climate Change is a platform for young people, especially it was designed for African young people, uh, so that they can engage into policy initiatives as far as climate change is concerned. It's a platform which encourages young, youthful minds to collaborate, come up with innovative ideas. As you all know that you're being affected by the effects of climate change, this is the platform whereby they can share ideas, exchange knowledge, how to mitigate, how to adapt, how to get access to climate finance in order to tackle the climate crisis.
That's really a lot. And how long has the organization been in store? And what has been the impact in what you have done for the African people? Just to give us a background of what your organization is really doing.
So this is like a continental platform. So from the continental platform, we now have national chapters. So AYICC Zimbabwe is a national chapter, but it falls and feeds into the continental AYICC. So it has been there for ages. I'm talking about 10 years plus. A group of young people from other African countries, they came up with these brilliant ideas. This is before when I was even in the picture. And I'm glad to say that even up to now, even if they have left, they are now pursuing with other things, but we are now there pushing things, making sure that using an inclusive approach, we are leaving no youth behind as far as, adapting to the effects of climate change through agriculture, mitigating to the effects of climate change through a number of initiatives like tree planting, waste management, you can name it.
Thank you so much. So now before I want to just have another background of, since you're talking about African youth in climate change, why did you decide to venture into this? Bearing in mind that you said you're not a farmer and this also deals with climate change, the agricultural sector. So why do you see yourself in this space?
So you find that when you're talking about the effects of climate change, the effects of climate change are quite broad. But when it
Yeah.
comes to food security and different agriculture practices, climate change has affected those. Ask a farmer and they will tell you that if they do not have water security, then they cannot practice their farming. Ask a farmer, they will tell you about the desert locust because the deserts also need food. So they are now migrating from their habitat to areas where they also feel comfortable, and this has affected farmers. If a farmer cannot have enough rainfall, then it will actually affect one's produce. If a farmer does not have, cannot predict seasons. Right now, it's now very, very difficult to predict seasons because of climate variabilities. So this is why we decided to focus on climate change. It's really so cross-cutting, that much I know. But considering that agriculture is the backbone of Africa, considering that agriculture, when you're talking about agriculture, we're talking about boosting economies. This is why we really ventured into climate change. This is just a component on climate change adaptation, on how farmers can adapt with the changing weather conditions, but it's quite broad. We have issues to do with climate finance, issues to do with climate mitigation, biodiversity conservation, and climate change.
Yeah.
The list goes on and it's endless.
Well, that is a lot to take in, especially the fact that we have to. A lot of people do not know the impact of climate change to them personally. So you talking about climate change and how it impacts farmers, the agricultural sector is very, very cogent, especially in this climate that we're living in today. So thank you so much for the work your company does and you personally also do in your organization, Ms. Elizabeth. Thank you so much.
Well appreciated.
Yeah, so we're moving on to our question, which brings us to agribusiness. So what does agribusiness entail and how can it contribute to economic growth?
Okay, so when you're talking about agribusiness, you are basically talking about agriculture plus business. Yeah. So those two words entails agribusiness. We are mainly talking about the business parts in the agricultural spheres. We're mainly talking about economic activities when it comes to farming. So this is what we're talking about agribusiness, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're getting profits from whatever we are selling, from the produce that we get. We have profits, and it should be a business, and the business should be sustainable at the end of the day. And of course, if we are having profit, it means we are also contributing to the GDP of a country. I'm talking about the income. I'm not only referring to household income, but I'm also referring to national income. Because as we are farming, some of the produce that we get from our practices, we can export them. Remember, we have a lot of land here in Africa, and we have been exporting a lot of raw materials. I'm talking about our soy, I'm talking about our cocoa, I'm talking about coffee, quite a number of produce that we export, and this also contributes to national income. It also means that people's livelihoods are safe because we are creating employment for them, which is quite a good thing. So it actually boosts our economy, which is quite essential and relevant and very, very important.
So now you spoke about, I'm going to relate this back to your organization. You spoke about farm produce, exporting cocoa. So is there anything that your organization as itself deals in when it comes to agribusiness?
Not really per se, because as far as our organization here, really it focuses on how young people can adapt with the changing climate. So we are more on ensuring food security, household food security through fish farming activities. We do not export. This is just a small scale, very, very small scale project which aims at improving communities, aims at improving their livelihoods and making sure that young people, they are capacitated enough to adapt to the effects of climate change, and they're always kept busy. Yeah.
So when you were speaking, I know that you're also based in Zimbabwe. So I want to ask, how has agribusiness been in your own climate? Saying that you are a national of Zimbabwe, so how has this transcended into economic growth in Zimbabwe, or how has agribusiness been in totality in Zimbabwe?
To be honest, all I can tell you is, as far as agriculture is concerned, as far as agribusiness is concerned, it's something that also contributes to our GDP. Besides tourism, besides the minerals that we have, agriculture is the backbone of many African countries, and it has contributed so much. Of course, over the years, we have been affected by floods, we have been affected by droughts, which has actually affected the produce of farmers. But under normal circumstances, this sector has so much potential. If we have investors, it has really so much potential. And if we have access to finance, which is why we are having this conversation today, there's a lot of potential, because at the end of the day, we need to adapt to these effects that I was telling you about. If we have drought, it doesn't mean we cannot continue with our farming. We need to come up with an alternative measure. We need to make sure that young people, not only young people, but each and every farmer has access to water, has access to irrigation. They have the equipment, they have the technology, they are capacitated technically and financially. So, yeah.
Okay, so now this just brings it to mind that since you were speaking about Zimbabwe, is the government in any way helping people in Zimbabwe to, get from wherever? Since you said that agriculture is also a very powerful sector in Zimbabwe and in most African countries. So what has been the role of the Zimbabwean government in helping people within the sector to, progress to where they need to be, especially to help the GDP at the end of the day?
To be honest, the government of Zimbabwe has been overly supportive, and I think the farmers are the weakest spot of the government, because they are always given incentives, they are always given inputs now and again, and they have access to funds, they have access to loans. So the government has really been supportive to farmers, has been really been supportive to the agriculture sector. And right now, the Ministry of Agriculture is actually working on rehabilitating some of the dams and the rivers that are heavily silted, which is quite a plus, because at the end of the day, we need water. And in order for us to get that water, we need to make sure that we maintain the dams that are already available for the farmers, so that they can practice their irrigation and they are not heavily affected when we have severe weather conditions like delayed rainfalls. So this is like a work in progress, but honestly speaking, my government has been really supportive of farmers, and it does not discriminate whether you're a young farmer or an older farmer. You still have access to the same resources. So long you have all the requirements, then you are good to go.
That is very important, because I know that when the government contributes to a particular sector, for example, agricultural sector, like you mentioned in Zimbabwe, it contributes a lot to that sector, and it helps the sector to move, especially when you have the right policies in place, the right people are pushing for that industry, for that sector to be one of the front burner sectors in the economy. That takes it from A to like M, because it transcends. So that is something that is very important in the day of today. So now moving on to my next question, which is the role of youth. So now, how can you maximize the potential of this industry, ensuring it becomes a major driver of the economy?
To be honest, how we can maximize. Okay, this is the most important part of this conversation, how young people can maximize in this industry. Well, we need to understand that when you're talking about agriculture, it's in two ways. We have the policy part and we have the production part. And most of our young people are farmers, which means that they are more into production. Then we have the policy part. If you are to ask how many young people are more concerned into agricultural policy, you might find that we have a few of them. Whereas this is where it all starts, because at the end of the day, we need robust and strong framework, and we need policies. And if the policies from the beginning do not include how young people will be engaged in different farming activities, how young people will have access to finance, then it kind of like complicates everything. People might not notice it, but it really does. Because we first have good policies. If we have good policies, these will translate into projects. Then if the project is that sustainable, it will translate into sustainable income generation. So most of our young people are most interested into the income generation without not necessarily following the policies that are behind. So I would encourage, as a way of maximizing the space, I would encourage young people to follow these policies, to review, take part into reviewing of the policies, Because if you don't, you're putting young people's lives at risk. Because if the policy document, if it's an agriculture policy document, if it does not mention anything to do with young people being mainstreamed into the agricultural space, or young people having access to agricultural finance from the beginning, then it complicates everything. Because when implementation comes, there won't be an opportunity for young people to access those funds. So it becomes very, very tricky. And this is where I come in, because I've been working in the policy space. Though I'm, like I said, I'm not a farmer, but I've been contributing so much in the policy space, which is where I think the bigger chunk is. And most young people are not so interested into policy, which I would love to encourage them to be, because this is where it all starts. But we cannot talk about maximizing without elaborating on the importance of policy, reviewing policy, making sure that our voices as young people are being heard, making sure that we are bold enough even to request for the government to support us. This is their responsibility anyway. We have to be bold enough. And we can do so many things because we are young, we are energetic, we can come up with innovative ideas. Sometimes you don't have to get into the farm and do the farming, but you can come up with an innovative idea. It could be a service. You can offer a service which can actually generate income. It could be a platform that you might create, a smart platform or a phone platform. Like this COVID era, people, they tend to sell their produce online, and you can come up with that platform and you can actually get an income from it. It's still part of agribusiness. So we can actually, there's a lot of things to do. I mean, we can come up with research. We are being affected by the fall armyworm, and we cannot wait, guys, from the Western countries to come up with the cure and the antidote for that. It's the role of us young people, because we are the ones that are being affected. So there is a lot of things to do. I mean, we cannot talk about agriculture without talking about technology. We need technology to take lead, and the only people who can take lead are young people in the space. And this can only be achievable if our policies are referring to youth, if our policies are making sure that young people are not left behind.
Wow. That was a lot to take in, and it just makes me learn a lot of things from you. And even if some of the things I have known before, it just gives it a fresh voice to what I have been hearing previously, because we spoke about the policies which are very fundamental to achieving anything you want to do in any state. And because I am also a lawyer, so I have a background in policy formulation, and I know that once a policy is formulated, the implementation stage is just as important as the formulation stage. So now that is so, because I know in Nigeria we have a lot of laws, beautiful laws, like laws in black and white, and you cannot overemphasize the need of having the law that is proper to that institution or to that organization or to that state in this sense. Like making sure that your laws are customized to the extent that that the people that you are making the laws for can actually implement these laws, because they're the people that these laws are for. So the youth being involved in the process of that lawmaking or that policy making is very crucial, because it gives them a new voice, a new perspective to whatever they didn't know before. Because it's just like when you're talking about mainstreaming women into policy making, mainstreaming youth into policy making, because it gives them another voice to also incorporate into that policy. Now, that is something that is very important, and something that youth have to maximize to ensure that their voices are heard, and their voices are at the end of the day gets to implementation stage. So now, one thing I want to bring out, or another question I want to ask on this question, is the implementation. So now, in situations whereby the policies have been made, the policies are the black and white is beautiful, what then happens in the implementation state? How do we ensure that the policies that have been made that are good to go, like they are crossed their T's, they are dotted their I's, are implemented to the letter?
Well, I think that is a very critical question. And before I respond to that, I love the point you talked about, incorporating women, making sure that women are not left behind. Most of the time when people refer to youth, Also amongst youth, we have women that are there. I mean,
Yeah.
the age group of youths here in Africa, we're talking about 35 years and below, which means that we have also an issue to do with gender. You know,
Mm-hmm.
male and women, female and men. How are female going to be engaged in certain projects? How are women not going to be left behind? How are, you know, how are male people or the boy child? How is he going to be incorporated in all that? That is a very critical point, because at the end of the day, you find that in the farming sector, women, they actually spend more time in the fields, and this is something that shouldn't go
Definitely.
unnoticed. So that was a
Mm-hmm.
very, very important point that you mentioned, that in as much as you're talking about, you know, the role of young people in the space, there is also an issue to do with gender as well. You know, it's just not youth, but youth it comes in different sectors. There's also an issue to do with gender, and we should actually pay particular attention to that. Then when it comes to policies, how can they be implemented? Before we even get to the implementation phase, when we are drafting and crafting these policies, we need to ask ourselves that, is this feasible? I mean,
Mm.
is this just not only good on paper? If I'm
Yeah.
to do it, if I'm in the minister's shoes today, will I make this work? I mean, these are the critical questions we should ask as young people, which is why I was emphasizing on the need to have young people on the other side of the table who can critically ask those questions and make sure that they have the answers. That, okay, fine, you have come up with this, but how practical is this going to be on the ground? If you say 15 households or maybe 15,000 households are going to benefit, are they going to benefit for sure? And what measures are we going to put to make sure that they are going to benefit from this project? So these are the critical questions that we need when you're crafting these policies. It's not a matter of just crafting a policy because we have been requested to craft one, but we need
Yeah.
something that is workable for us, because these policies will be there for ages before
Yeah.
they are reviewed or before they are amended. So we need to be
Definitely.
on the other side of the table and give our voices and critically analyze the policies, because at the end of the day, they will affect us, not today, but
Yeah.
maybe in the future. If they don't affect us, then they'll affect our children.
Mm-hmm.
So it is quite important that it's not a matter of just coming up with, technical jargons to be part of the policy, which we do not understand. And when it comes to implementation, we later on fail to implement them, but there were young people in
Yeah.
the room. I mean, it's now old fashioned. Policy
Mm-hmm.
is attractive as well. When it comes to agriculture, it's really attractive because it shapes everything.
This just brings to mind the Agenda 2063 of the African Union, because it's a 50-year gap, and the fact
Mhm.
that it's that long, it gives people the idea that they have enough time to implement the goals or the agenda that was set in the 2063 agenda. So what just made me remember that was the fact that you said you have to actually create feasible and implementable goals, and at the same time, as we're creating our goals, we're creating our policies or our implementation material, we should ensure that the timeline we are fixing for those are actually practical timelines, but at the same time they are not too far-fetched or they are not too long, so that people are getting to work immediately and they're not giving them um the lapse in time that they can take up to 50 years before they can achieve it, which is what I have about the criticism I have personally about the Agenda 2063 within the African Union. But that's just by the way. So now we're going to move on to our next question, which is, how can youth tap into funding within this industry, and what is the process involved?
Wow, that is the most difficult question. How can youths tap into funding? Okay, so first and foremost, you need to understand that when you are into agribusiness and if you're a young person, this is a business.
Mm,
We are all in a business to make money and to make sure that we have profits. And we have to be honest with ourselves, we have to be transparent, and we have to be genuine as young people.
yeah.
So if you're talking about a business, you cannot say you're running a business without a registered company.
Mm,
And this is the situation that most of our young people, we are always victims, because you're saying that, I have a business, I have a farm, it's good to have a farm. But are you also thinking that when you want to trade, or when you now want to take your produce to the markets, it is just not a local market? Of course, you can start with the local market, but in the event that your business grows, um, you are going to need a registered company. Are you registered as a young person? So this is quite important, that we need to be authentic, we need to be genuine, you need to make sure that you're registered. And also we need to make sure that running a successful business does not entail you to have financial resources only, but you need to get the technical know-how. How do you come up with a budget? How are you going to balance this? The amount of inputs that you need, and the estimation of the outputs that you get from the inputs that you have. I mean, those calculations are quite important, because they will determine whether you have a profit or a loss. So those skills, you need to get those skills as well, because it's not only about the money, but it's also about the relevant skills that you need to get in order for you to make sure that you are also putting some cash in your pocket. Then there is also the need of having a bank account. Most young people, they fall short here. You're into business, but you don't have a bank account, or you have a bank account, but it could be your local bank account, which will not, which will make it difficult for exports. Maybe if you want to venture into exports, you cannot receive finances from outside. It's not an international account. I know we need to take it as day at a time. We need to take it step by step. You can start, for starters, start with coming up with a local bank account. Go and open a local bank account for your company. This will actually, make the whole work quite easier. And even if you intend to sell your produce, etc., maybe to a bigger supermarket, they are going to ask for your account details. They will not give you your money in cash and say, okay, fine, thank you for this. They'll ask for your accounting details. And if you don't have, then you're only embarrassing yourself. So this will actually make it so easier for us young people. And also the need to keep records. It is always important to keep records of the things that you're doing, be it at the farm, be it maybe even your bank statements, the transactions that you have done. You never know who is going to ask for those. Your investor might ask for them. And if you don't have the records, then it might complicate quite a number of things. So I think this is what I can share. And also a plan. What do you intend to do? A clear methodology. If you're into a farming business, what are you actually doing? If you are into growing tomatoes, when do you plant your tomatoes? When are you going to harvest them? When are you going to sell them? etc. That record is quite important. If you're into fish farming, how many fish do you have? You need to know how many fish are there per pond, per square meter, how many fish can be accommodated per square meter, something like that. That information, the record keeping itself is quite important, because this is the smallest things that investors will ask, because they need to make sure that as they invest, they can easily calculate if you will get profits, because at the end of the day, you need to know what you're talking about, and you need to have a record of the things that you're doing and a plan.
Yes, I cannot agree more, because I think especially now in these days where you have a lot of fraudsters, people want to, because you spoke about incorporating your company, and I know that one of the things that before you get grants or before you get funding, people want to ensure that your company is, registered. If it's not registered, they want to ensure that, it's very authentic. So those ways by which you spoke about incorporating your company, ensuring that it's registered, ensuring that it has a bank account, ensuring that you're keeping records of whatever is going on in your company, and ensuring that you know what is the market you're actually dealing with, what your business is really about. You actually know the nitty-gritties of your business is very, very important. And I think that sometimes these are things that, business or entrepreneurs take with levity. And these are things like what you're pointing out, especially in the agribusiness, is something that is vital to it, and something that every person going into this industry, I don't really think it's only just this industry, but in every other industry within the economy, also has to take cognizance of when they are starting their business, or when you want to grow your business from point A to point B. So it's very important for youth out there to see this and know that if I want to get funding from people outside, I have to have a sustainable plan of the sources, my company, and everything has to be dotted to the T's, and dotted to the I's and crossed to the T's. So Thank you so much, Ms. Elizabeth, for giving us that, nitty-gritties on how to ensure that your businesses are good enough to get funding and to get grants and, to ensure that your business is credit worthy. Thank you so much. So now, this also links back to the question I asked before. Are there barriers to be crossed in unlocking the potential to funding, and how can youth do so?
Of course, there are barriers. Of course, there are barriers. Number one barrier is the issue to do with age. Most funding, they will tell you that we are funding young people from 18 to 29 years. Whereas here in Africa, the definition of youth is from 35 years and below. And this will also go back to the policies that I was talking about, that we need to question these. I mean, if a donor is coming through the government and they will tell you that we want to support youth initiatives, and they will tell you that we are supporting youth initiatives from the ages of 39 to 29. What is going to happen from those that are from 30 to 35? Because if our constitution says that the definition of youth is from 35 years and below, then it means that each and every investor that is coming in should be in line, or should at least recognize our constitution, our laws, and our policies. So this is number one barrier, which most young people are complaining about, that, okay, fine, maybe there could be access to funding, and maybe the ones that are from 18 to 29, they do not have much experience, and as they apply for the grant, they might not get the grant. But those from 30 to 35 years, they have experience, they've been in their businesses for quite some time, but then the platform is not open to them because of an age barrier. So this is one of the barriers that is there. Then there's an issue to do with collateral. You want to get a loan, and then you go to the bank, then they will tell you that we need collateral. I'm still 30 years old. I don't have a house. I don't own a car. And what am I supposed to do? And this is a huge barrier on its own. And it makes everything so complicated, because I might have all the documents that you need, but simply because I do not have collateral, it complicates everything. And this is why most young people are sort of like, they'll not even attempt to apply to the loans. They'll not even attempt to apply for other things, because people will request collateral, and where will you get it? And we need to be real and practical when it comes to giving access to agriculture, especially when it is meant for young people.
So now you mentioned two major problems that are barriers towards youth getting access to funds.
Not only two.
Okay.
Not only two. I just mentioned two, but of course we can go on. Issues to do with access to land. I mean, you can apply for a loan, but someone will request for the papers of if you own the land or not. This makes it so complicated. Most young people, they do not have access to land, and this is not a Zimbabwean problem. This is an African problem. We do not have access to land. And people should take it easy, or should make it easy for us to apply these loans and grants, because honestly speaking, some of these stumbling blocks, they could be intentional, but they could be flexed a bit, so that we actually get opportunities to get the resources that we need, the financial resources that we need for our agribusinesses.
So I think this is actually a very vital point, because we have so many growing businesses out there that need funding, and if this is a barrier that needs to be crossed, how exactly, if a youth is getting this restriction, either be it age or either being collateral or access to land, and sometimes the restrictions are even based on your country. If you're from so and so country, you can't access this fund because it's not meant for you. So how do youth who fall into that category, how exactly can they tap into the funds that have been required of them, or tap into funds that they should be able to access ordinarily, aside from the barrier that is restricting them? So are there ways in which that a youth facing this problem can cross this barrier?
Of course there are ways, which is why I'm saying that we need more young people on the policy table, because one of the greatest traits that we should acquire as young people is the power to negotiate.
Yeah.
So if maybe the private sector reaches out to the government and says we have such funding directed for young people, and if we have young people in the board, they should negotiate. They should start by saying, you know what, the age group for our young people is from 35 and below, and you're saying you only fund 18 to 29. This will not work, and we have to make sure that it works for our young people. They also need to make sure that this is all still part of the negotiation skills, because I'm not talking about diplomatic negotiations here, but I'm talking about business negotiations. Because at the end of the day, you need to get that skill. You're going to negotiate with the manager of with the bank manager. You need to convince him to invest into your farm. You need to convince investors as well. So this is why we need young people on policy, because if our policies do not support young people's initiatives, then we'll keep on having these problems. It all starts from policy. Young people, they do not have land, but if they want to apply for loans, then we need to make it so flexible that they can apply for loans and maybe get a letter from the owner of the land which says that, okay, I'm leasing my land to this person, can you please assist? Or I don't know, whatever way that will work for us. But I mean, these stumbling blocks, they were put, and I'm sure they can also be removed, because they are, of course, they were put for a reason. But now this is a situation where we are saying that we know that the youngest generation of Africa, it's a group of young people. I mean, it's a group of young people, okay? They constitute more than 60% of Africa. They're innovative, and we know that they have the solutions to food security of the continent. And with this stumbling block, it means that we are pushing them away. So we can come up with ways, we can come up with measures, we can come up with, with brilliant ideas on how we can make it a win-win situation for all of us. So these things, they can be done, and they need the push of us young people. We need to speak out. We need to be in those board when people are making these decisions. We need to have other young people that are speaking on behalf of other young people. Some of our young people that are into farming, they're based in the rural communities. They are not even much more concerned about policies and stuff. But it is our role and responsibility to speak on behalf of them, because they are more well-versed into farming and, stuff like that. So policy issues, this is where it all starts. We can come up with frameworks that support young people, that are youth-friendly, and this will be a win-win situation for all of us.
Definitely. I think what you just spoke about is definitely needed in Nigeria and even across Africa, because such hindrances I don't know if they are intentionally placed there, or if because of rules, regulations, those barriers are things that need to be crossed. Hi, hello.
I can hear you.
Yes, so sorry about that. I'm having some network issues. So, basically, that what I was saying. So, all these barriers are things that need to be crossed in order for us to access the funding that can actually be in Nigeria and even in Zimbabwe and even in Africa. So now you spoke about private bodies, about international organizations. So now this then brings me to my next question, which is, what are the roles of international bodies, governments, the private sector in achieving this? What is actually the role in ensuring that we can actually get funding, the youth can get into the places where they need to be to make the policies, to ensure that implementation is made? What are the roles of these bodies in ensuring this can actually be achieved?
So we need to understand that these bodies, they have a vast of responsibilities. Some of their responsibilities are just to make sure that there is money that is available, and that money should be accessible. So we have what we call the Green Climate Fund, which was created because of the effects of climate change. And some of the funds from the Green Climate Fund are directed or are supposed to be channeled into agriculture, because like I mentioned, that climate change has not also spared agricultural activities. So some of these institutions, they are basically there to make sure that there is money that is available, and that money should be used or should be utilized in a more sustainable manner. Then we also have to. Am
Huh?
I audible? Sorry,
Yes,
can
you
you hear
are.
me?
Yes, I
Oh, okay,
can.
fine. And some of these bodies, they are also there to increase or maybe to assist in increasing the production. By production, I'm talking about the produce that is at the farm. So they are there to make sure that they assist with the technical capacity, not only financial, but the technical capacity to increase the production, and make sure they also make it easy for linking the farmers to markets, because at the end of the day, before you get into the farming businesses, you need to make sure that is there a demand for your produce,
Mm-hmm.
and if there is a demand, is there a market for the produce? Because
Yeah.
you can grow as many tomatoes as you can, but because you don't have proper storage, and you don't have proper transport systems to transfer the produce from point A to point B, then you're going to be affected by post-harvest loss. I mean, then it will contribute to food losses. So some of these institutions and these bodies, they are there to capacitate technically, to capacitate financially. And I'll just mention just but a few. We have the GCF. I talked about the GCF. We have Africa Development Bank, which is a very good program that is currently running, which is called Enable Youth, which is a program for youth. You can get trainings, you can be capacitated, and it has also youth funds, which they can actually access. And we also have IFAD. I have worked with IFAD, I think, for like 3 years back. We have WFP, IITA. You can check out these abbreviations. They are quite common in the agricultural spaces. And basically, their roles are more or less the same, offering technical capacity, offering financial capacity, making sure that young people are included in all these activities using an inclusive approach. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So we're gradually coming to the end of today's, talk. And personally, I have learned so much from you, especially as it relates to the barriers youth have faced or youth are currently facing in the agribusiness to, maximizing the role of youth, especially in the policy sector, mainstreaming youth in development of the policy sector, the gender, mainstreaming even the female gender into policy implementation, policy development. Everything you've spoken about today is quite germane and something that people that are listening out there should incorporate, or if they are planning on starting their agribusiness, it's something that they should listen to, because it helps them plan for their agribusiness or plan their sustainable plan for their business to ensure that they can cross their T's and dot their I's. So now, in bringing this session to a close, I know you're quite experienced in your field, even if you said that you're no farmer, but at the same time, you have a lot of experience that you can share with people out there, people that are starting their business. So, what will be your message to young people going into agribusiness?
Well, I think this is my most important part of this show. I mean, you're getting into business for a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
you need to make profits. Do
Mm-hmm.
not eat your profits.
Wow.
It's a business. It's a business for a reason.
Yeah.
And if you eat your profits, then what are you doing? You're only killing your goals, you're only killing your vision, you're only killing your dreams. So wait a bit, make sure that the profits that you're getting, you're returning them into your business. And don't be that kind of person who is always waiting for inputs year in and year out. You're given inputs the first year, you're given inputs the second year. The third year, then why can't you buy your own inputs? Because you are believing that you're making profits. So you cannot wait to be given inputs year in and year out. Then the following year again, you're given inputs year in and year out.
Mm-hmm.
Then for young people, I mean, when we were growing up, we were taught that, there are some professions that are more important than others. Like, my parents would tell me that you have to be a doctor, you're too smart, or you can be a lawyer because you love
Yeah.
arguing. So when we're growing up, it's either each and every person in class will tell you that I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, and they'll be proud of that. No one would say I want to be a farmer, because farming was referred to as something that is for the poor people or for the people that live in the rural areas. But what I want to tell to people that are into, or that would want to venture into agribusiness, is be proud with your profession. If you're a farmer, be proud that you're a farmer. In order for that lawyer to stand in court today, she or he needed food. And where did that food come from? It came from the farm. And you have to be proud of your profession, because if you're not proud of your profession, then who will believe in your story? Because if you're sitting in front of people, in front of investors, and you're like, I kind of like run a small agribusiness venture, or I have a small farm whereby I farm, already you're doubting yourself. You're not even proud of the work that you're doing, because you're not even proud. Have you ever seen a doctor who tells people that I kind of like studied medicine? And come on. You need to own your own story, if you get what I mean. You need to believe in yourself. If you're a farmer, then be proud, be bold. I'm a farmer. I'm running my business. I have 2 hectares of tomatoes, and I've started diversifying through value chain addition. I'm now making tomato sauce. I have tomato powder. We can actually sell our tomatoes as fresh produce, etc. Be proud. Even someone who wants to invest in you has faith in you, because already you're believing in yourself. The moment you start doubting yourself already, if you're doubting yourself, why would you expect an investor to believe in your story? So it doesn't make sense. So I think this is a message that I'm sending across to young people, that, if you're a farmer, then you are a farmer. And you're not supposed to be ashamed of your hustle. That is your hustle. Don't say, I kind of like. That is the most coolest profession ever on the planet. When Adam was put in the Garden of Eden, he was made to be a steward, already he was made to be a manager of the environment that he had. There were apple trees, already he was a farmer. That was the first profession that God created in the Garden of Eden, to be an environmental steward. Already he was a farmer. He was taking care of his family. He was taking care of, I don't know if it was Eve or I don't know, but he was taking care of things. I mean, that was the first profession. And I don't know why young people would be ashamed to talk about farming or to talk about their agribusinesses. So this will be my message to them. Do not eat your profits, and make sure you're proud of your hustle. You are not supposed to be into doubts. So I can go on and on and on
but
I think I have said enough.
Yes. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to have you, and your last 2 cents on this matter. We should own it. If you're a farmer, we should ensure that we are owning it, and do not eat your profit is quite vital for anybody going into business, for anybody going into agribusiness. It's a vital thing that we have learned today, that I have personally learned, and I'm going to incorporate it anything. So anything I'm doing right now, I'm certainly going to start owning it and not be afraid to tell anybody that this is what I'm doing, because I'm proud of who I am. So thank you very much, Ms. Elizabeth. It has been a pleasure having you, for me especially, and I'm very sure that our audience has had a very exciting and enlightening time just having you on our session. And I'm very sure that one of these days we'll obviously bring you back here to talk about another topic or something related in this field. But thank you so much for coming. I am very glad to have you on board with us today. So this brings us to the end of our session today, except if you have any other thing to add for a roundup.
Of course, I'll have. Stop asking me if I have anything to add, because I'll always have something to add. I mean, we also need to understand that here in Africa, I mean, we are the high producers of cocoa, we are the high producers of cassava, we are the high producers of cowpeas, we are the high producers of millet, we are the high producers of sorghum, and we have been exporting all these things, but then we now buy them back. I mean, I don't know, I was listening to someone who was telling me that they went to an area where they farm cocoa, and they went with a bowl of chocolate, and they didn't even know what it was, but it was a chocolate. We now buy back these things as, finished products. We export cocoa, then we import chocolates, and they're quite expensive. I mean, if you are a young person, you now need to consider diversification. We now need to consider adding value to the raw materials that we have, because raw materials, of course, we need them, they are good, but they will not give us as much income as the products that we are now buying from these developed countries. We export cocoa, then we now buy coffee from them. It's something that we can do on our own. I mean, it's something that we can diversify and venture into as young people. And there are a lot of opportunities. We cannot import things like tomato sauce. Come on. It's something that we can do on our own. Raw materials on their own, they will not revive Africa. We need something that will revive Africa. We have the raw materials already. Let's make use of the raw materials. Governments should have faith in young people, invest in young people. They are very innovative and brilliant minds to come up with, very good products, which we do not even have to import. If the Maputo Declaration talks about how it is important to invest into agriculture and food security. And from the Maputo Declaration, we have seen a lot of African countries that have been giving incentives to farmers, including young farmers as well. This is an opportunity for us as young people to take advantage of this and make sure that we are adding value to our products. If it's garlic, then let's come up with that garlic powder. Let's come up with, with all the things that we are importing. We can manufacture these things and we can start exporting, not only exporting raw materials, but exporting as finished products, because this is where we are failing at the end of the day. And I believe the solutions, the innovative mind, the energy lies in young people and the young people we have. So this is what I just wanted to add. I know that after this I will not have anything more to add.
We can keep going on and on, don't worry.
But this is what I just wanted to emphasize, that okay, fine, we have the raw materials are good, but we now need to add value, because at the end of the day, this is a strong business case. This is a very strong business case, and there are job opportunities that are there. Actually, the farming industry, or the farming spaces, they are offering billions and billions of job opportunities for African young people. And we need to position ourselves strategically as young people from Africa. And we also need to make sure that our businesses are sustainable. Because of climate change, people are slowly becoming environmental conscious. This thing of planting, of growing crops in a wetland. I mean, I was reading criteria of another fund, and they were very strict, and they were saying that if you're farming in a wetland, we are not going to give you the funds. If you're practicing streambank cultivation, we are not going to give you the funds. If you don't have any component of climate smart agriculture that you're practicing in your farm, we are not going to give you the funds. So we need to start positioning ourselves strategically, because the funds are there. But the most important thing is, are we able to access them, and have we positioned ourselves strategically when the funds are available?
So much to take in, and it just shows that this industry is a billion-dollar industry, that a lot of things are going into it, because everybody eats. So agriculture is a very big industry that everybody just needs to start looking into and start investing and start ensuring that everything that needs to be done is done, to ensure that you can successfully tap into this industry. So thank you once more, Elizabeth, for coming. And this brings us to the end of today's show. So thank you all to our audience for staying tuned to this very end.